Hi, hi. I'm Misako Morishita. I was born Misako Morishita, November the 30th, 1940. So I don't I don't know anything about what happened in the first four, um, 4 years of my life. But according to my parents, my dad was given a notice to go to road camp in 4 days, and because he didn't want to leave my mom with 5 of us, he went to Raymond, Alberta, with his brother, and he got a job there, working in a sugar beet farm. And so my mom and we all went there, and the winter was so cold.
Where did you go?
From Raymond, went down to 45 below, and I know my mom told me she used to go out um, and put snow in the bucket and bring it inside and heat it up so we could all have a bath and this kind of thing. But eventually the cold got to her so bad she lost her eyesight. And so we were given permission to go to Roseberry, and from Roseberry we stayed for 2 years. And then from Roseberry we went to Lemon Creek, right? And we were there in Lemon Creek for 2 years. And then, so now I remember a little bit of things that happened to me when we were in Lemon Creek. And my dad was given a, what do you call it, a truck to take the Japanese families to Slocan so they can go back to Japan or go back to Toronto. And we were the last ones there. And I remember a few things that happened to us. They had a public bath, and my dad would put us all in a line. He would walk in front with a stick and a tobacco can with a candle in it. And then my mom would do the same thing, and she was at the back of the line, and I was in the middle because of the coyotes. You could hear the coyotes crying as we're going to have a bath, and he would have to go first thing in the morning to heat it up because it took such a long time. And then I remember crying. This is at Christmas, and I got a bag of candy. And I remember this because I was so happy. I ran over to my mom and dad and told them what I got. And I said, "Where's yours?" And they said, "They don't get one." And I started to cry because they didn't get a candy. So my dad said, "Well, we can have one of yours." And I know he stuck his hand in there, and I said, "Don't take the orange because I only got one." And they're laughing. They're laughing because, and I was so happy. I just kept running off and off to play, you know. And I remember all these little things. And then we got a chance to go to Slocan in the spring. We were there from the fall till the spring, all by ourselves, and everybody that left their cats and dogs around, so my mom would feed them. And there was this one little wee dog, tiny little wee dog, you know, you can't see the eyes, and but he kept running after us, and we were in the truck, and I asked my mom to stop so we could take the dog, and she said, "No, we can't because he barks too much, and people in Slocan aren't going to like it." So anyways, we were living in one of those old hotels from way back when. We were in the middle, a family, and there was another family in the front and then another one in the back. And we stayed there until my mom and dad went and bought 2 commission homes from Lemon Creek and they put it back to back so that the 8 of us could live in this house. You know what the commission home looked like. They're small 3-room places, right? And anyways, they stuck it together, and all these men that came to help my dad, my mom just fed them supper, and they didn't ask for money or anything, and so they got that together, and then he went and built a sawdust bin in the side of the house, and then behind the sawdust bin he built a shed for the wood that we had to chop the wood, and behind that he built a Japanese bath, and then on the second lot we had the outhouse and the chicken coop around the outhouse, and my mom had a garden in there. My dad planted cherry tree, plum trees, 2 plum trees, and an apple tree, and during the summer or in the spring we would go and pick ferns. I think it's warabi, right? In the spring, and then she would go out into the forest and dig up dandelion leaves before they had flowers on it, and we ate that like spinach. And I found out later on that the health food store have dandelion tea, which is the best thing for you. So she knew something about all that type of stuff, And so, and then in the summer, we'd go huckleberry picking, and we would go and there's a place that we used to go to in Slocan, which was the falls. This is this is Springer Creek, and it's up in the mountain somewhere. We used to always go that way, and now with the new road, it's right there. So because when I'm smaller, it seems like a long ways to go. But there was a place there. Where is it? I can't find it. No. Anyways, this is what our house looked like in the winter of in the 50s, early 50s, right? This winter was 1949. This is our house that my mom, my mom and dad built, and we lived there till 1960. They moved out, and also too, when we went huckleberry picking, she what was it? Oh, I can't find it now. We would stop off at this little creek and have our lunch, and then we would go home, and she would wash it and can it, and I put my bathing suit on, and I went swimming, and I spent most of my summers swimming, and then in the fall we would go pick mushrooms with my dad, and I remember once him and I went fishing at Lemon Creek, and I think from Slocan to Lemon Creek it's got to be 7 miles. My mom put a cushion on the bar of the bicycle, and I sat there, like this way, and we went all the way down to Lemon Creek to fish. Couldn't find nothing, but he said, well, we might as well just sit here and eat Mom's good bento. And then we come home again, right? And then I would go with him to look for a Christmas tree in 4 feet of snow, this kind of thing. Come home soaking wet and what have you, and chopping the wood for the stove, because we had a sawdust burner, and then we had a pot-belly stove, and so we had to have some lumber and what have you, and my mom would sit there and heat the tub, the bathtub, to make hot water to do the laundry, you know, and this kind of thing. I spoke a little bit of Japanese because I'm the one that always had to run over and get Mr. So-and-so to come and have supper at our place. And all my sisters wouldn't go. And I was always the one that ended up going. So I had to say, you know, I had to learn to say furo, you know, because of the bath and all this kind of thing. So my mom was always asking me to go. And after schools, I would always go there and help her dig the garden. My mom and dad spoke Japanese, but then we kind of answered them back in English, I think. So we didn't have much money, but we really ate good because we had gunny sacks full of potato, carrots, apples, and all these kind of things. My dad built a root house on the opposite side of the house, and I was always the one having to go get the, you know, fruit and everything. But come March, I had to go get carrots, and I stick my hand inside these rotten carrots and all these things, and but we were lucky because we had chickens, and I don't know where she learned how to, you know, grow chickens, but we had chickens for Christmas, and I could see her sitting outside in that snow and plucking the feathers off, and it stunk so bad. But it tasted so good. You know, we had chicken and mashed potato and things like that for Christmas, and for New Year's, Mom made sushi and things like that, you know. We had there was a Mr. Kinoshita's store in Slocan, but he had to order the rice and everything from Vancouver, right? And he had to go pick it up in Nelson and all this. So rice was kind of hard to come by. So we grew up mostly with potato. And even my dad, when he got older, he preferred the potato and you know, this type of thing. And anyways, and when I was in grade 7, we had to learn French. And, and I said to the teacher, why do we have to learn French? I'm not going to France, and I'm not going to Quebec. But I was the type of person that would, you know, say something right away like that. And, and, then, and then when I was in the grade 7, this is grade 7, so grade 8, we had a teacher that came, and he was off up north in the mines, and he got asthma or something, so he had to quit. So he came back to teaching, and he hadn't taught in 15 years. And he was kicking me out of the room every day, almost every day. And this one time, he was talking about T-O-O, and he said T-W-O, double O. And we thought he said T-W-O, right? And I said, T-O-O and T-2-W-O is two, not, you know, 1, 2. And he got mad at me, and he threw a pencil at me. And I ducked, and it hit the girl behind me. And he kicked me out of the room. And I was standing out there, and the principal went by. He said, you again? I said, well, why don't you get a decent teacher? Then I wouldn't be standing out here. He says, come to my office. And so I thought, uh-oh, he's going to kick me out of school. And I went and sat down. He says, I want you to have patience because we can't do anything about him until the Christmas break. And so the Christmas break, we had a new teacher, and he said, he can't teach us anything because we don't know anything from the first part of the year. So we had to stay after school and catch up. Well, public school, we had an elementary school from grade 1 to grade 6, and then from grade 7 to 12, we had the high school. No, there wasn't that many Japanese kids now. They had already left, but there were a lot of the Dukabor kids. I don't know if I can say Dukabor now, but Russian kids, you know. And then they had the Sons and Freedoms that lived up in the, and they wouldn't go to school. But they quit after grade 9. And most of my friends were all from down the valley. So when they went home after school, I didn't have anybody to you know, chum around with. So I stayed home most of the time in my teenage life, and I did embroidery. You know, my mom would buy the thing from I think Army and Navy magazine or something, new catalog, and she would buy me these, and she'd iron it on, and I would do all the embroidery. And so I spent most of the time there. Oh yeah, when I was in grade, no, I was in grade 4, grade 5, when we first got to Slocan, there was a lady across the bridge that taught us Japanese, you know, the I, U, E, U, O, but I only learned the alphabet, you know. And then now I find that the computer teaches you words instead of the I, E, U, O type of thing. And it's so much easier to learn because they tell you what it means and they write it in Romagene so I can understand what it is, you know. And I keep thinking, gee, I better, you know, learn more. But then I have other things to do now, so. We came out here in Vancouver in 1959. My mom, my youngest sister, my brother, my mom and dad came out in 1960, and we bought the house. Now, my dad went to Toronto thinking that he might be, we might go to Toronto instead of Vancouver. So he went out there, but he found it so busy, busy, busy. No time to sit and enjoy a cup of tea after supper. They were taking the dishes away, and so he didn't like it. So we came to Vancouver, and we bought the house on 29th and Nanaimo. And me and my 3 sisters came out in 1959, and we stayed in a 1-bedroom apartment on Broadway. And of course, by that time, Nancy was already, you know, nursing. So she had graduated from nursing, and she was the first. Her and this other friend of hers were the 2 Asian girls who were accepted to become a nurse in after the war. So that was like 1950, whatever, anyways. I'm not sure about the date, but this is when my mom came out here, and this was taken in the province, this from her thing. But anyways, I went to hairdressing school because when I was 10 in Slocan, I used to go babysit this little boy, and she was a hairdresser. And so when the baby was sleeping, I would go and help her, you know, do this and sweep the floor and do all that kind of thing for her. So when I came out here, I went into hairdressing, and when 1 month after I was there, the head teacher asked me to go and work with Raymond. Raymond was one of the top hairdressers, Japanese hairdressers in those days. I think I don't know. I can't remember his last name. Iwase or something like that. Yeah, yeah. And he told me that all these actresses used to come, and he had to do their hair, And all I did was sweep the floor and, give him the pins and help him do all this. And then, after I finished, the head teacher said she got me a job to work at Oakridge. So I worked at Oakridge there for a year, making $35 a week. People get that in one day or 1 hour nowadays, Yeah. And then from there, after a year, they asked me to go to New Westminster and work as a hairdresser. And then in about a month or 2 months after I was there, I had this one customer that kept coming to me, and she said to me, "Do you know of a real good Japanese gardener?" And I said, "Yeah, my dad," because my dad was working for his friend as a gardener at that time, she gave me her address, and apparently he went there the next day, and he was cutting the lawn, and the lady across the street saw him and said, "Could you come and do mine too after you finish?" So he went over there after he finished, and then while he was cutting her lawn, her son came over to visit, and he said, "How would you like to come to me?" And in one day he had 3 customers, and then from that he built it up to about over 300 customers. He was working for the Surrey Hospital and a company, Japanese company on Grandview Highway somewhere, Takahashi's or something like that. And the only person that really hated it was my sister, because she had to write Christmas cards to every one of his customers. She just dreaded it and then plus that, 100 or more personal, family friends. So she just didn't like that at all. But apparently that's what my dad did from way back when he was working in the store, before the war. He was working in the store, and he would write down everybody's name that came, and they have a record of it at the Nikkei Museum. And when he came, how he got there was when my dad was 17, he wanted to go to university to be a teacher, but his mother wanted him to go to LA to help her side of the family in their business. And so he was waiting for his cousin to come, who was a Miyamoto, and he was late. So the ship that they were supposed to be on left. And so my dad had to take the second one when waiting for the cousin to come, and they took the second ship. And when they got to Hawaii, they announced that the ship that was in front of them was the last one the U.S. was going to accept with all the immigrants and Japanese immigrants and that. So that ship had to go to Vancouver. And so he went to Vancouver, and he worked with his sister who owned that store. And then when he was 26, they sent a picture to my mom in Shida in Japan, and asked if she would marry this man. And for her age, she was working in a bank. She was going to get a promotion, and she didn't want to, but the aunt said she had to. And in those days, I guess you just, obeyed. And so my dad went over there, and they got married. He left, went back to Vancouver. She had to stay there for a year before she could come. And then after the year, she came by freighter, and she was seasick all the way across. She couldn't come out of her cabin. And on the very last day when she came out, before they went under the bridge and came out to Vancouver, she was feeling good, so she went out to look for her aunt and turned a corner, and she saw this great, big, huge black man. Never saw a black man in her life. She's 20 years old, right? Anyways, he had on a fancy garment and fancy bright clothes, and he was 6 feet tall. My mom was only 4 feet 10, right? So she got scared, and she went running back into her cabin and said, "Where in the heck am I coming to? Is it all going to be all black people living there?" And she was so scared, you know, she wouldn't come out of her cabin. And then when they docked and she saw my dad coming down, she saw my dad, and she said, "No matter how tough this marriage is going to be, I'm going to make the best of it because," and then she looked at the freighter and said, "because I am never going to go back on that ship again to Japan." And she was, and then the first year, I think it was the first year or second year, they had a chimney fire at their house, and she was so panicked that she lost her firstborn, was stillborn, right? And I think after that, I think my dad kind of changed his attitude towards her, be nicer to her, maybe. And then he himself said that he felt really bad that the baby didn't have a name. So on the birth certificate, he wrote his name on it. He gave his firstborn his name. And the birth certificate, we found just when we sold the house, and I saw all these old papers, and my sister said there was a Japanese fellow there, and he asked, "What does this mean? What does this say?" And it was written in Japanese, you see. So he read it, and he said, "This is Teiji Morishita, who passed away at such and such a date." And my sister said, "No, my dad just passed away not too long ago." And so there had to be somebody else. And then that's when we figured out that was my would have been my older brother. But 2 years after my mom passed away, they wrote in the province that they had scattered the ashes of newborns or babies and newborns into that creek bed in the cemetery. And that was just 2 years after my mom passed away. And it's so sad that my mom didn't know about it, you know. But we go there now, and we, you know, we have a little rock with his name on it, and we have it there for them, yeah. My name, I changed it when I came to Vancouver because everybody said, "Pardon, could you spell that?" And I got so sick of it. Somebody said, "Why don't you just call yourself Mitzi?" So everybody that went back to Toronto knew me as Misako. So they still call me Misako. And somebody calls me Misako, I don't look to see who it is because I'm so used to it, everybody calling me Mitzi. Yeah, but I had it changed. I had added it onto my gift, you know, yeah. When I came here to when I got married in 1966, and we had to leave. We were living, after we got married, we lived 1 year in New Westminster because I could walk to work, and Ken just worked on Burnaby and New Westminster border, and so but then when we got married in 1966, the father had just come out of the hospital, and he was told he only had a year to live, and he wanted to become a grandpa before he passed away. But he passed away on 29th of December or something, so 6 months after. And my oldest daughter was born in February, 1 month early in February. And I said, it's so sad that, he missed her. And my mom said, no, they didn't, because they passed each other on the way, him going and her coming back, and that made me feel better, you know. But anyways, so our first Christmas was, he had to go back to Toronto, and then we had to move out because they didn't allow babies in the apartments, and so we bought a house. We had to buy a house real quick, like when I was still in the hospital after I had Nadine, but she was premature, so she was in there for a whole month. And after 5 days, I was able to go back to our apartment and clean up and get everything all ready to take to the house. And then from there, we had to go back to the hospital in New Westminster every day to feed her and all this kind of thing. And she was in the incubator for 2 weeks, so we couldn't even go, you know, carry her or anything like that. And then she came back. She came out about a month and a half after. It's really funny because even my dad, when he got older, he'd prefer potato, you know, and his favorite food was turkey. He just loved Thanksgiving, you know, because we had turkey on Thanksgiving. And then, what's my favorite food? I got lots. No, I, I prefer my potato as well. Yeah. And just last month, my daughter finally made me a baked potato with sour cream on it, and oh man, was it ever good. But no, I think it's because we grew up with eating potatoes and that, you know, and no, but no, I had a little bit of a garden after we bought the house, and I made my tomato, cucumber, and, you know, things like that. Because in Slocan, whenever we came home from school and they said, you know, we were hungry, Mom would just tell us to go in the garden and get a cucumber or a tomato or whatever. We never had no McDonald's or anything like that, you know. So with this virus, it was very easy for us to get by because we're back to the way we used to be, you know. And then having no money, even after we got married and having no money, it was, I was used to it, you know. So we got by, had a very simple life, but that's the way I wanted it, you know. Yeah, we went a few times. I would like to go there just to eat now. You see, when we first went, we went in 1986, we went, the hockey team, the Japanese Oji-sons that my husband was playing in, was going to have a game with the Japanese doctors and that in Tokyo. So my sister, who worked for Iwata Travel Service, arranged for us to go on this trip. And that's the first time we went. We spent 1 week in Tokyo while they played the hockey. And then after that, we all scattered. Some went to Hong Kong, some went back home, and we took the sky train, the bullet train, all the way around Kyushu. And then we ended up at my cousin's place. Well, when I first went, I said to the lady at the desk, she asked me, I asked her if she could speak English, and she said, little bit. She said, can you speak Japanese? And I says, Skoshi, right? But I speak samurai Japanese. And she laughed because, you know, I said, my mom left 70 years ago, and the language has changed so much. But she thought I spoke pretty good, you know, and even if I did use old language. And even today, I have a neighbor next door from me, and she's been here for about 30 years, and she speaks half and half like I do, you know. But no, I find that the Japanese language has a very unique way of expressing things, like when your stomach grumbles, they say goro goro, and you know, things like that, right? So we use that kind of word a lot. And even now I speak, you know, with the odd Japanese word, but I can't, but I've lost it since my mom and dad passed away. So I don't speak it hardly any now. Well, I wanted to go back to Slocan because I really like it there. To me, you know, just going to Mickey's Bluff and just staring down at the lake, it was so meditating for me. I found it very, I would go across the river, across the bridge, and just sit on a rock and just watch the water go by. I find it very meditating. Not so much with the people. And then, of course, you know, we weren't the only ones. We were about the last, almost the last few that left Slocan. But there's in Slocan, you see the west side of Springer Creek was where all the Japanese more or less lived, and then on the other side where all the other people lived, you know. Yeah, this is Slocan. You see, I don't know if you. This is the old road that was along the water. Now they have it way up in the mountains, and this is where that is. And the famous tunnel is on this other side, which I'll show you. It was right there. See this? This one here, this tunnel, right? And yeah, so that's all I got. Oh yeah, my dad, I have a picture of my dad and my mom here when they got their Canadian citizenship. But if I'd known you were going to show you wanted to show some pictures, I would have bought you some more because I've got some real good ones, you know. Oh yeah, that was very, oh yeah, very, very exciting for them. Yeah, there's this missionary lady, Mrs. Bailey, her name was, and they used to go after suppers to go learn English so they can go and get their citizenship. Yeah, she was really pretty proud. And she knew all about the Prime Minister and everybody else at that time, you know, and all this, yeah. But I think my mom, after the war and having to go to Raymond, she had it a little bit easier than other people because she didn't have to look after all these other people that lived there. My mom was married and became the maid because my aunt who owned the store was a real, you know, whatever, and she had to do their washing and ironing, and she had to make the bath and do all these things. Plus, they sponsored people from Japan, and they lived in the same building because it was 3-story high, right? Anyways, she did all that work. And then after, when we went to Raymond, all she had to do was look after us. So I think her life became a little bit easier, I think, you know, than I don't know what it would have been like if she had to look after all 5 of us by herself, you know. Well, I mean, riding along the bus, it was kind of scary because all these people on the sidewalk and everything like this, because I'd never been there before, you see. And then before that, Ken would drive me to the church and that. So, yeah, but
Which church was that?
Buddhist church there, yeah, yeah. Well, we went there. That's where your mom was always so nice to us and everything, you know, she really enjoyed it. We went quite often for the spring and the fall. And that's the only time we ever got into Vancouver. You know, we spent most of our time out here in Richmond, you know, yeah. Oh, I thought it was great. When we had to stop in Nelson and I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I thought, oh, I could smell the air. It was so fresh and it felt so nice. I couldn't believe it. The difference in the air in Nelson, and I was so glad to be back. I wish I could have gone into Slocan and walked around a bit, but I did get to go there eventually. I says, before I pass, I want to swim one more time in this lake. But I went to visit a friend, and she let me stay with her in Silverton, just outside of New Denver, right? And she took me there, and it was raining, but I says, I'm going to go in that water if it's the last thing I do. I don't care. And I took my shoes off, and I walked in the water. I said, that's good enough. So I says, oh, I have to come back again one more time so I can go swim in this lake. I spent all my life, you know, in the lake. My sister's friend taught me how to swim when I was 5, and I've been there every summer. Yeah, it's I really, and now I'm back to swimming again. So, yeah, I just started last week, and because I just had the hip operation, you know, I'm having a hard time keeping my balance. But in the water, I don't worry about it. And I'm jumping up and down, having a good time, and the ladies are laughing at me, and they're saying, "This old lady is having so much fun." Because they all got black hair, right? And I'm the only one with white hair and hardly any hair now because I got it all cut off. That's Nancy, Lil, me, and Kim. That's my second. That's my second sister there. And then that's Lil. She's 2 years older than me. And then that's me. And then that's my youngest sister, Kim. Now, and then the other cousins there. This is Kim. She was born in Roseberry. And then when we moved to Slocan, I was 4, going on to 5, when she had kidney trouble. So we had to go, my mom had to go to New Denver to, you know, take care of her on the way. My dad was working at the camp, so he only came home for the weekend. And I was 4, and I guess I missed my mom, so my sister would take me to the bus stop, you know, the Greyhound, and put me on the bus. And we knew the driver because he lived there in Slocan, and so he took care of me. But 20 minutes bus ride along the edge of the water and everything, you know, it's a long time for a kid 4 years old. And then when he told me to just stand there until he left, and then I crossed the street and went into the house, nobody there. So I had to walk all the way up to New Denver to the hospital, and that had to be a good mile or so, you know. And she would pop her head out the window, and I'd be playing with her when my mom's friend came out and gave me heck because she might want to come home with us. So I had to go back to the house. And in those days, they didn't have lights. So I didn't know how to, you know, I was in the dark, and I was sitting there waiting for my mom to come home, crying my eyes out because I was scared, right? It was dark and what have you. But anyways, I guess I managed. Oh, I have to tell you one thing though. When I was in grade 3, there was this boy that used to call me a dirty chap. but my girlfriend was a clean Jap, right? Anyways, he called me that in school one day, and he was sitting in the next row, and so I went and hit him. And my teacher saw me, and he asked me why I did that. And he said, well, because he called me a dirty Jap. And the teacher gave me a ruler, and he said, next time he calls you a dirty Jap, you hit him with this ruler. And so every once in a while, without thinking, I'd hit him. I just kept hitting him. and then my friend told me, he said, if you want him to stop calling you that, call him Canoff. His name was Canoff, right? And he didn't like the Russian or the Doukhobor kids. And so I said, well, I'm a heck of a lot better than you are, Bobby Canoff. And he stopped calling me names because of that. And I didn't get after him because of it, because I felt sorry for him. You know, he was, there was something wrong with him for wanting to hate somebody like that. Yeah, yeah. But I got along okay with everybody. I didn't, no matter how much they gave me a bad time, I just said, Bachiataro. That's like saying you're going to get bad luck, right? See, and that's what kept me going, because I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, because they hurt my feelings. That's not right. So that's the way I had a very simple, nice life, and I got 3 great kids. Yeah. The only thing I'm sorry for is that he passed away a little bit too early.